Hey, welcome to Air Cooled Anything. Today I'm working on the 2017 CC CB Performance Builder's Choice engine kit, and we are going to bolt on the carbs and sort out the linkage. It does actually come with some instructions. I think there's the instructions on the linkage here. So I have this. I have this baggie, which is just separate, and that definitely looks like carb gaskets. There are some studs, but I've also got this in the kit too, all of this gubbin. So I've got another set. So they've sort of doubled up. There's two sets of carb intake gaskets, what looks like an identical kit of studs. So I've got a bunch of, oh, I should hold up, got a bunch of spares. Look, I've got those. I have these as well, which look like throttle linkage business. I don't know what that is. Bunch of Jubilee kit clips and fuel hose line stuff. You might do something different there. These, I should imagine, are to attach the air cleaners. Big old hex bar, and we have the carbs themselves. Bubble wrap. So let's get this out. I'm not even sure if these are sided, so I'll have to get them both out and have a look. So there's one. And there's the other, all wrapped up, never even taken it out. Cling film yet. So this is basically just going to be bolting them on. I'm not setting them up or anything like that. I'm just going to set up, bolt the carbs on, and I'm going to mock up the linkage. I'm pretty sure the linkage doesn't attach to the fan shroud at all, so I should be able to just like build it up, and then that should be it. It's in place, because at the moment my fan shroud has to come back off because I haven't got an alternator or the fan attached. I need to get the engine that's in the bus out and steal the alternator from that engine. That's pretty much a brand new alternator. It's probably only done about 500 miles. I only put it on at the start of last year when my dynamo went, and I thought it's time for an upgrade. Go to an alternator because I have a leisure battery on board. So it charges that up super quick now, which is great. So let's have a look at these two bad boys. No, they are not sided. They are exactly the same. So we just whap them on. First thing to do is to stud up the intake manifold. So I'm just going to peel back this masking tape that I put on to stop stuff going in. Bit of the old blue Loctite. And we'll double nut those in. So there's the studs in. Gasket lines up nicely. As we recently discovered, these are not sided, so it doesn't matter what side they go on. Let's hope they go on. Quite often the case with carbs, never want to go on. And there we go. So, then we have some washers, go on the studs. Then we have these nuts to come in the pack. I assume they're to go on here, and so you can get a ring spanner on them. They're M8 12 across the flat, so as you know, M8s are normally 13 across the flat. These got a narrower flat to make it easier to get a spanner on them. Just doing these finger tight. Obviously worth pointing out, no sealer on gasket. I have fitted, as I said before, I have fitted sealer on gaskets when I've had leaks, but really the solution isn't ever sealant, it's flattening the mating surfaces, sanding them, or having them machined so that they don't leak. Nice, access is nice and easy. That's one of the reasons I went with a aftermarket fan this type with a curve like this, because there's more access for carbs. With the stock bus fan, it just comes straight up and comes across. There's very little room for doing this sort of stuff. So just going to go around, sequentially tighten. You haven't got to go crazy. You don't want to distort anything. Don't want to distort your car bodies. You don't want to damage any jets by slipping your spanner like that. This one doesn't want to go on this one. There we go. It's not quite enough room to get my ring spanner on there. Carbs are always fiddly, aren't they? There we go. And that is the carb on. Carb on. I will do the same on the other side. Yep, the butterflies open up nicely without fouling on the intake, which can happen if they're not matched up properly. So there we go. Let's hope these carbs work out. I've always been a bit skeptical about these brand new Webers, never run them, but a lot of people swear by them. And hopefully they're going to work out well. So I'll do the other side. So as you can see, I've got the other side on, and now the next thing to do is start looking at mocking up the carb linkage. So I'm going to open this up and see what nuggets of information are held within this little bit of paper here. And voila, that's great. Pretty much tells you how the whole thing goes together. A lot to take in, so I need to sit down and have a read of this. So before we can install the linkage has to affix to something, and on these CB linkages they affix to the base of the air filter. So you get a pair of air filters like this, they're sided, come apart, that's the base, and they sit opposite each other with a linkage mounted between the two of them. So the first thing to do is to fit these to the tops of the carbs. So they pretty much fit on there underneath the two velocity stacks, which are fitted on with 10mm nuts. So we'll take those off. Simple. Go back on. So it just sits like that. Your velocity stacks go on top. Then there's a couple of threaded mounting points here for some thin bolts which will screw the air cleaner cap on and squash down the filter, the air filter. The question is, will these go on with the spring washers? And the answer is no. it won't. It won't go on with the spring washers. Damn it. So if you've got no spring washers, we should probably put a little piece of Loctite in there. Little piece, little drop. Just putting a wee dibble in there. As with all my nuts, I'll put the side with the markings up. I'm not sure it makes much difference, but it's what Harry Pello did. It's good enough for him. It's certainly good enough for me. So that's the bases on. I will do the other side. So the instructions kind of show you how loosely it all goes together and what goes where. The first thing we're going to do is assemble the hex bar. Now you need the central bar to go on, and this locks in place with a little grub screw. I'm not going to put those in yet. And then you have the arms which attach the linkage to the hex bar to the carburetors. Now, just by looking at pictures of other guys' setups online, there's a number of ways you can put this on in relation. You can put to the central bar, you can put it on so if I line them up, they're along the same line like this. And it seems to me what we need is a configuration like this. So it's not quite at right angles, but very nearly. I'd say it's about 80 degrees, 75 degrees difference. So we'll just put those on like that. Now, throttle linkages are kind of quite simple really, aren't they? They're just basically a form of levers and joints which connect your throttle cable to both of your carbs. But the thing you want is, once it's all set up, you want the carbs to lift off the stop, the idle stops at exactly the same time when the throttle's actuated. But you also want them to move through the complete range to open throttle at the same time. You don't want one of your carbs opening not quite as far, because as you open up the throttle, then you're going to get more air and fuel going into one side of the engine rather than the other. It's not really an exact science, as far as I'm aware. You just have to try and fiddle with it, I think. But because when the linkage goes across the engine, it sits on top of the alternator, and the alternator's not in, all I can pretty much do is mock this up. At the moment, I'm not going to spend ages measuring and making sure the distances are the same and all that sort of stuff. I just want to mock it up and see if there are going to be any problems. So that's what we're going to do. Right, so the hex bar attaches to the bottom of the air cleaners with these ball joints, and the ball joints go into the steel sleeve of the hex bar, and we'll put a little, when we do it properly, we'll put a little bit of grease in there. It has some adjusting nuts which spin onto the end, and then to keep the hex bar central between each side, there's a little spring, goes inside and then just pushes down on there. So the idea being that the spring keeps the hex bar between, evenly spaced between the two sets of carbs. So we're going to have a go at rigging that up now. So the first thing I'm going to do is just, there's two mounting points. There's a high mounting point and a low mounting point. We want the lower one, I figure, because that gets the central bar closer to where the accelerator tube comes through. So that doesn't want to go in on its own. Now, CB Performance have very kindly made these in metric. So we have a 10mm on the ball and 13mm on the locking nut. So I've got the ball slightly on that side. Do the other side, put the locking nut on. And put it in. So that's both balls in. How easy is it to get this thing on? Let's find out. Oh, springs, so spring goes in. Right, that's got to go in a lot further. Springs binged out. So never done one of these before. It's all a learning experience, so we'll just wind those in all the way. So put the spring in the end. Putting the spring in this end, and I'm standing right in the camera so you can't see. That doesn't go. So here I've got the spring in the other end. I'm putting the hex bar on the ball joint that end, and I'm forcing it in as far as it will go. It won't go any further than that. And you can see it's not going to attach to here. So the way to deal with that is to probably take the plates off. So the hex bar doesn't fit. I've had a measure up and it's about 10mm out, and that's with so if we put the balls into the base plates of the cleaners and you have the locking nut pretty much wound as far down towards the ball as possible, you need an extra 10mm off. You need 10mm off the bar for it to clear the balls, to be all the way in. So I'm assuming if I wind the balls in with the locking nuts off the thread, I'll have hopefully enough room to fit in the bar if I cut off 5mm from each end. So I've marked up 5mm. I'm going to get my angle grinder out and I'm going to cut them off. I'm hoping that there's going to be enough. I mean, obviously the surface inside with the ball sits, there's plenty of that, but will there be enough drilled out from inside for the spring to work? Maybe I'll have to get a drill and deepen the hole by 5mm as well. We'll have a look. I should probably do that, but we'll see if it works without. I know that these things come in different lengths. I know that because it says on the instructions, it says the crossbars are available in many different lengths. So the length that's been supplied to me by CB is the wrong length for this application. You'd think they might know that, because it's all to do with the size of the cylinders and their heads and their intake manifolds. So that's what we're going to do, and then we'll see if we can get this on. So I just tried fitting it without the camera rolling, and it's not quite going to work because the hole that the ball sits in is not quite deep enough, because the spring can only compress a certain amount and then it won't compress anymore, and that's just about not giving me enough clearance to get the thing fitted up, and I certainly won't be able to wind in and start using the locking nuts. So what we need to do is we need to drill out 5mm at least. Well, I'm going to start with 5mm this hole. Now I don't want to in any way compromise the inside diameter that's already been drilled, because the ball sits in there, and if I take off any of that material, then the ball that sits in there will have too much play, and that's going to make the throttle linkage sloppy, which is it's going to be impossible then to balance the carbs, and we don't want that. So I'm going to drill a hole which is just about big enough to put to seat the spring in without touching the outside diameter of where the ball sits. So that's what we're going to do next. So the hex bar in the vise, I haven't got a pillar drill, just got a hand drill, so it's a bit hairy. So I've got a 7mm bit in there, which is roughly, which is enough room hopefully for this spring just to seat in the bottom of the hex bar. I put the drill in, I marked actually 6mm, I'm going to go 6mm, and so I know when I've gone as deep as I need to go. So I haven't drilled out the full 5mm because I thought I'd stop and just check. And so this is the drilled end, and you're getting that much of spring sticking out the end. And this is the non-drilled end. So you're getting that much sticking out. So I think I've taken like 3 or 4mm. We'll measure it. So I'm going to drill this side the same and then do another test fit and see where we are. We might still need to take some more material off the bar and drill the holes a bit deeper, but let's just go in stage. I just want to go in stages. Just don't want to like do too much, because once you've done too much you can't undo it, and I think this is right on the limit. What I've measured and anticipated is right on the limit, so might just need to take a little bit more off, but it's going to work, and the ball still fits nicely in this drilled end. Still nice and snug. Still fits, there's no play. Still moves nicely. So we'll do the same on the other side. So both ends cut and drilled. So it's all a little bit shorter. We're going to try and fit it rather. So spring in that end. Spring that end. Oh, can't get a spring on. Need longer fingernails. Oh, and this end off that end. There we go, it's on, but the balls have to be wound out so that you can engage the lock nuts. So have we got enough room internally in the hex bar to do that? 2, 3, 4. There we go. It's going to work. 2. There's a little bit of play in there. So we're just going to keep taking this out. do is we will eventually measure the distance from the stand to the end of the hex bar. No play at all now. You want the spring to be slightly engaged, don't we, I suppose? There you go, just a little bit of play. And obviously, I haven't got any of the bars on, but I'm just going to get the vernier calipers out. And I'm just going to have a quick look, see what the distance is from the end of the hex bar on each one, from the bottom there. 16.8. 17.24. So it needs to come out a little bit on that one. And thus, and a bit on this one, like thus. $17.07, $17.02. That's close enough, isn't it? There we go. Hex bar's in. And it's not being greased up, but it's turning nicely, and there's a little bit of movement between the two. And the idea is the spring keeps that tension and keeps it in the middle between both of these. So I'm going to take this off. I'm going to fit on the bars, and then we're going to look at the linkage from the bars, the linkage couplings, to the throttle spindles, shafts. So I've got the hex bar back on with the bars in place, and we're just going to roughly put these in. I'm going to line the central bar up with the hole where the throttle tube comes through, and again the Allen key for this is a US size. I'm not sure what size it is, but I'm not sure what happened to my Allen key. Something's happened to that, so we'll just use the grub screw and lock it in place. And I've just completely unaligned it. Start it off by hand. That doesn't want to go in. Let's try the end ones. There we go, that one's gone in. So I don't know if I've got these in the right orientation to get the linkage out and figure it out. That one's on. There you go. That goes there, and then obviously, well not obviously, but the accelerator cable comes through, the one that's on the vehicle, and this little gudgeon goes through here, which looks like it doesn't want to fit. So maybe we'll have to drill that out a bit, tap it in with a hammer. Try tapping it in with a hammer when it's off. I don't want to damage anything. And then your accelerator cable just attaches through there. And that's one thing I've noticed, I haven't got the tube which goes through the engine tin, so I've got to get myself one of those. But one more to fit. Yeah, that's just going to end up stripping. So I'm going to have to clean that thread out. And I'm pretty sure that this is going to be an imperial thread, and I haven't got any taps for imperial thread, so I'll have to probably order one. We'll measure it up. So I've taken the hex bar off and this arm off, and I had to order and wait 2 or 3 days for the right size tap to come. I haven't got the right tools to measure the grub screw. I haven't got like a thread gauge, but I knew it's a 1/4 inch. So I phoned up CB Performance, spoke to the woman that answers the phone there and asked her and she just knew off the top of her head that it was a 1/4 by 20 tap needed. So obviously this is I'm not the first person to phone up and ask that question, whether people lose the grub screws or they have to tap them. I don't know. So I'm going to run this tap through and get it back on the engine. Now we're going to look to attach the linkage from the arm down to the carb. And what I'm going to do is, first of all, I've made sure they're roughly the same length, and obviously when we do the carb setting and balancing, we'll make sure the linkages are exactly the right length they need to be. One end of the Heim joint is left hand, and on this kit it's marked with with a line, and the other end is just a standard right hand thread. And I always put the left hand thread on the bottom. I don't know why, just so I know where I am, so you know which way to turn it to lengthen or shorten it. Now there's an armature which needs to go on here, like this, which the linkage attaches to, but you've got to take this off, this nut off, and that's held on with a lock washer, very old fashioned. So I'm just going to give it a few gentle taps. Not probably ideal for carburetor spindle, carburetor throttle shaft. Just need to get an edge on it and just get it off. There it gets going. So the lock washer been removed, and then obviously if I just put a spanner on and do that, I'm forcing the shaft to twist, which you don't want. So I'm going to use the armature on the other side. I'm going to put a screwdriver in against the body of the carb to hold it like that, just to break that nut. Hopefully it's 11mm. You don't know how much stress that puts on the shaft. It could slightly warp it, you know, twist it. Don't like doing that, but you've got to do it. Washer comes off. Get the armature on, you've got to put it on the right way. It goes on like that. It goes back on as it was. Put your nut back on. Got to tighten it up, and again, you want to use the throttle body to jam it. Let's tighten this back up. Then you've got your lock washer, and I'm going to use, rather than hit it with a hammer, I'm going to use a pair of pliers to do it, because less stress, I reckon. There we go. And the linkage just goes on like thus. And we've got some nylock nuts. So this is with the kit. Then we just got to tighten these down. So there we have. There we have the carb linkage attached. Seems to be. It is fouling on this edge here. So this bottom nut is fouling on a little piece of the carburetor here. So it's not opening fully. Nowhere near fully. Right, so I'm going to do the other side and see if we have the same problem on the other side. So both carb linkages on. There's the nuts you have, which adjust tension on the hex bar, and this side is okay. This side is okay, loads of clearance, but on this side, don't know if you can see underneath, maybe you can see the nut is fouling on the carb. So this nut here is fouling on the carb body here. Now I don't know if there's some sort of fancy air or fuel passageway in there, so I don't want to take that off. So I'm going to have a look and see what I can do. I'm going to look online and see what other people have done. There we go. Oh, another thing is I bought this, I was looking for throttle tubes to go in the engine tin here, and I found this rather nice product. So it's got a little roller on it, so your throttle cable comes out this tube. I'll put some tape on this to stop it scratching the powder coat. And so when your throttle cable comes out from the side, you're not going to get any wear on the throttle cable, so it's going to roll against this, which is a fantastic little thing. So I'll have to make a, we'll get into that later, so it needs to be bolted so you can take it in and out easily. So I need to put a captive nut on the other side, and I've got some pop rivet captive nut things. I'll do one of those. So I didn't actually have to go online to sort out that problem. I just had another quick look, and that's the nut that comes with the kit, attaches to the end of the Heim joint, and I have a metric version. I mean, this is some sort of US size across the flat with a metric pitched thread, and I just used a metric one, and you can see the difference in the size. This one's a lot smaller, doesn't foul on the carb. This one that came with the kit does. So if you're going to get one of these linkage kits and you're on these new Webbers and you're having that problem, just simply swap out the nut and it clears. I mean, it clears by about 1 millimetre, only just clears, but clearance is clearance, it works. Whilst I'm waiting for the exhaust, I'm running out of things to do, so I'm going to fit the air cleaners now. So it comes with these studs, and you get these nuts, and I assume you screw these on, and then you tighten those nuts down. I assume that's what you do, because there's wing nuts that go on the top. I want those to be the same length. I'm a little bit anal like that. So 4 inches. 4 inches, there you go, that's pretty good. And that's like 10 mil. It's actually some sort of a weird American. Tighten those down. Yeah, that's what you do. Then you have the air cleaner goes on, the filter goes on, just like that. Actually, you probably want to put the join. Oh look, there's a wire coming out there. So there's a join I'm not sure you can see that. There's a join there, so I'll put that on the inside. Then the air cleaner plate goes on top. You've got to shove the filter in. And a bit like with the valve covers, you've got these washers with, they're like a cupped washer with rubber on them, and I assume they go on here. I assume they go on these. Doesn't want to go on. Maybe this one will be better. I don't know why. You want these. It's going to make taking the plate off, because these have got to come off pretty soon to I've got to take these off to put the flow meter on when it's probably on the car, so maybe I should leave those off. I'll try putting them on, and so the wing nuts go on. There's actually like a spring wash that goes on first, but I'm just going to use the wing nut to hopefully get these on. Ah. So I've got that on a little bit. Came off easy. Yeah, they're going to come off. So we'll persevere. So there's that type of spring washer. There we go. I'll do the other side. So the next thing I want to do is I'm going to fit this throttle tube to the tin, the engine tin, the fan shroud. So I'm going to take that shroud off, and we're going to drill a hole, and we're going to put in one of those pot rivet screw-on thingies. Don't know what even they're called. Captive nut rivet screw thing. Don't know. So I've got the fan shroud off the engine. I've placed in the tube and marked up where the hole is. I found a nice dome-headed Allen M5 nut, which will just about probably go through there if I drill that out a wee bit. It's a bit tight as it is. And then I have one of these rivet captive nuts. So I'm going to drill 7mm hole in the fan, and then I use the rivet gun that screws on like this, pop it in the hole, and it creates a captive nut on the other side, and then we can just slide this in and out as we please. That was a 6.5, and we'll just now like take that out to 7. Oh. 7's not quite big enough. We'll use 7.5. Now you could use, could have used a self-tapper, but I just don't think that's as nice as just a regular bolt. So look. Feels good to me. Great handy tool that. So it just creates a locking nut. I mean, it's not as good as a captive nut welded on the other side because it does stand a bit proud. So when we screw this on, it's not going to go completely flush. So not completely ideal, but as I say, better than a self tapper, I think. And I've got a little tiny lock washer on there. So what we need to do is I just need to drill this out a wee bit, so that this bolt will fit through. I'd say it's probably needs to be like 6mm. So we'll give that a blast with some air and clean that off. So I've drilled out the hole a little bit just so it accepts the screw. Bit of crap. So it just goes in and then it eventually would go out through the front tin. Domed head Allen nut. Hopefully the holes line up. Please let the holes line up. There you go. There we go. And just tighten that down. Oops. There we have it. Roller thingy. So that's it pretty much for the carb linkage. I can't do any more until I get the alternator on, and I can really start like fine tuning and adjusting. The plan is to, when I take the engine that's in the vehicle out, it's got a pretty new 1-year-old alternator on there, and I was going to take that off along with the hub, you know, the hub nut and the spacers and the washers and the nuts and all of that sort of stuff, and transfer it to this engine. But I'm starting to think now I might buy a new alternator for this engine, so that I can keep the other engine as a spare, so it's a turnkey engine that can just go in and run if needs be, because I can swap it over in a few hours if I needed to, or put it in a different vehicle, or sell it as a turnkey engine. You know, sell it, show it running, it's always good. So I'm thinking about doing that. So that might be the next instalment, or unless the exhaust turns up. I'm so desperate for the exhaust to arrive. Anyway, thanks for watching.